Welcome. I'm glad you're here to learn more about the progress build in the assessment system in Amplify Science. I'm Patty Works. This video is designed for you to pause and explore waves, energy, and information on the Amplify platform. So you may want to stop the video for a moment now and open up a tab navigating to the Waves, Energy, and Information unit before we begin. This video session will focus on looking at the assessment system for the WAVES unit and how it's intertwined with the progress build. It's meant to follow part 1, where we analyze the progress build for WAVES, energy, and information. We'll look at the WAVES unit today, but this process of looking at the progress build and the formative assessments will be something you'll want to do with each unit to maximize student learning and understand where students are in their meaning-making journey. This video is designed to be used after you have explored the Progress Build and Assessment System video, part 1, and learned about the Progress Build for Waves, Energy, and Information. And it can be used independently or with a team as a tool to deepen your understanding of the conceptual ideas and how the assessment system is designed around them. And it can be used interactively with the participant pages, which are found on the FCPS Navigator 4th grade science page under miscellaneous resources. You may want to print those or have an electronic copy available to use during the session. However, you can also use scratch paper if you'd like. Here's our objectives. By the end of this 2-part video workshop, we hope you will be able to understand the connection between the progress build, the unit phenomena, and the Amplify Science assessment system. And we hope this will deepen your understanding of how to use the Amplify Science formative and summative assessment system. In part 1 of this workshop, we saw that the progress build for waves, energy, and information included these levels. At level 1, students learned that a wave is a pattern of motion. In level 2 instruction, they've came to find out that sound energy travels through a material as a series of particle collisions. And then in level 3, they found out that sound waves can differ in amplitude and wavelength. So here's our agenda for today. We'll start out with an overview of the Amplify assessment system, and then we'll take a look at the formative assessments and the summative assessment in this unit, and then we'll reflect and close. So how do your students show you what they know? When you see slides with this yellow dig in graphic, you may want to pause and discuss the questions with your team. So if you're working independently today, just think for a moment about this question and then restart the video. Well, many 4th grade teachers answer that they gain information on student understanding informally throughout the lessons in a unit. You may get a window into their understanding as you discuss text and their associations with print, listen to their answers in discussion, or look at their written explanations and diagrams or models that they've drawn. I think you'll find the Amplify Science assessment system gives you actionable information on student progress in ways just like that. So here's the assessment approach. Assessments are designed to provide credible information about student understanding of science concepts or about their dexterity with practices, cross-cutting concepts, or reading comprehension strategies. Assessments are actionable by providing specific suggestions for supplementing instruction based on the information uncovered. And assessments are timely in the way they are embedded right into instruction. They provide insight to teachers as they're teaching, meaning instruction can be immediately adjusted based on the data they provide. This may be different from traditional assessment, where teachers sometimes had to wait until the end of a chapter or a unit to find out what students understood. So take a moment to read the types of assessments in the Amplify program here to yourself. The majority of assessments are formative. They provide insight into student learning and they help teachers plan to adjust instruction as needed. As a result, the formative assessments are not designed to evaluate student learning or provide grades. There also are formal assessment opportunities in each unit with the end of unit assessment. The assessment system is three-dimensional, so teachers formatively assess students' conceptual understanding of the disciplinary core ideas, as well as their work with science practices and cross-cutting concepts. There are also formative assessments of literacy skills. And these assessments include guidance, a look for telling teachers how to gather information, and now what ideas with suggestions on how to respond to assessments, often in upcoming instruction. Critical juncture assessments occur at the end of each chunk of instruction for each progress build level. Each assessment is designed to provide information about student learning progress and then ways to tailor instruction to meet student needs. So these progress build ideas are the key understandings that the assessment system in this unit is built around. The pre-unit assessment, represented by the black line down below level 1, is a three-dimensional assessment meant to gauge students' initial understanding and preconceptions that they have about core ideas in the unit, including the unit's focal cross-cutting concept, which is patterns. The end of unit assessment, represented by the dark line above level 3, is a summative three-dimensional assessment to evaluate students' growth and understanding about core ideas in the unit, their ability to construct a scientific explanation, as well as how they can apply the unit's focal cross-cutting concept of patterns. The pre-unit assessment will reveal preconceptions, and it will also reveal ideas and experiences that students may have had that they can build on throughout the unit. It contains questions that get at students' initial understanding of sound and sound waves, their ability to write a scientific explanation, and it also looks at whether they can apply the idea that identified patterns can support an explanation. It contains an assessment guide on the lesson page right under digital resources. And this happens in lesson 1.1. Being aware of the preconceptions students may hold is really helpful. The information in the assessment guide can set the stage for you and help you know any preconceptions that you may be able to address as you're implementing instruction throughout the unit. The pre-assessment pages are found under digital resources in lesson 1.1, as is the assessment guide. Students learn about a girl who is working in her living room and she hears a big change in music coming from her brother's computer. The sound is shown in sound waves. Students are asked to describe first how the sound from the computer traveled to Maria through the air on page 1. Next, students are asked to describe why the sound suddenly surprised Maria using details about the labeled sound diagram. And on page 3, students are asked to describe how computers help humans send information across distances and then include a labeled drawing to help explain their thinking. So let's go to the platform for a minute and look at where you find that pre-assessment and assessment guide. So here we are on the main unit page for Waves, Energy, and Information. So to get to the pre-assessment, which is in Chapter 1, Lesson 1.1, I'll click on Chapter 1. And then Lesson 1.1. As you scroll down, you see that underneath the digital resources, you can see the pre-unit writing, and you can also see the assessment guide here. So both of those documents that you're going to want to to use to do the pre-assessment and look at the results are right here on that first lesson. Okay, so that's where you find that pre-unit writing assessment. The assessment guide that we looked at was also found there under digital resources for lesson 1.1. It includes suggestions to help connect the ideas to student experiences and ways that you can build on prior knowledge. It gives you examples of ways students might demonstrate that they're applying the focal cross-cutting concept or patterns in this unit. It is an entry-level assessment of a student's ability to write a scientific explanation about sound, sound waves, and information transfer. And it also is going to include some preconceptions about sound and how it interacts with matter. And here are the different preconceptions about sound that you might watch out for. One idea is that sometimes students may think of sound as being an independent entity. They may picture sound as being a thing rather than energy, and they may think that it is a thing that is somewhat separate from the medium it travels through. Another preconception may be that matter is an obstacle to sound. They may think that materials are barriers that block sound, while in reality, sound needs a physical material to travel through, and it goes faster through solid materials. And air and water being carriers of sound is another preconception students may have, where they think that the material moves with the sound, so that the air or the water moves together with the sound, not just the fact that the particles jiggle slightly as the energy goes through. But don't worry, within the unit lessons, there will be multiple opportunities to help address those preconceptions. The critical juncture assessments occur at key points in the unit at which it's especially important that all students understand the content so they're well positioned for the learning experiences to come. These are formative assessments that are meant to gauge their growing understanding about what's happening in the unit and those core ideas. And they occur after each level of the progress build, so you can see if students are ready to go on to the next level. So they gauge students' understanding at those critical points, and they'll provide formative information for you. They also include specific suggestions on how you can tailor instructional opportunities so that you can improve students' current level of understanding. Okay, so where do we find where the location of all the assessments are? Well, there are 2 unit documents that give you detailed information about the assessments: the assessment system document and the embedded formative assessments. The assessment system contains a complete listing of all assessments in chronological order, and the embedded formative assessments contains the complete text for any of the on-the-fly assessments with look for and now what sections, and the critical juncture assessments with assessing understanding and tailoring instruction sections. Okay, so here again is where you find the assessment documents on the main unit page. There's the assessment system document that it tells you a little bit more about the organization of the assessment system, lists all the assessments in order, and it also goes into an explanation of each type of assessment found in the unit. You get just some key information about each assessment, which of the standards it's targeting, what type of assessment it is, what kind of evaluation guidance is there for you. Then the embedded formative assessments document explains what to look for at each assessment opportunity, and it gives guidance for instructional next steps. So here's an example of an on-the-fly assessment. So it shows you what are you looking for during this activity and What do you do if students aren't quite there or need some more examples? Now we're going to take a look at the critical juncture assessments. So I'm going to ask you to open up the embedded assessments document in just a moment to look for the critical juncture assessments. So you'll pause the video and open that embedded assessments document that's on the main unit page. On your participant pages on page 2, you can write the location of where you find the critical juncture assessments in the first column. And then in the second column, you might list what are you assessing here? Which progress build idea? So the first critical juncture assessment is going to be assessing that first progress build level. You might want to even just write that into the blank. We are going to talk through the 3 critical juncture assessments together in just a few minutes. And if you'd like, you can fill in the last 2 columns about what do students understand in this assessment and in what way are we going to tailor instruction as we're discussing the assessments. Or if you have time, you may want to read through that and do it now on your own. Okay, so it's work time and you can pause the video to find the 3 critical juncture assessments and restart when you're ready to discuss. Okay, so here you see the location of the critical juncture assessments. In this unit, they roughly coincide with the end of the chapters. However, sometimes that varies a bit. For more detail on the assessments, you can look at the platform lesson activity where it will tell you if it uses an investigation notebook page or whether it's something that you're listening or watching for during a group activity. This formative assessment, Critical Juncture 1, is looking at students' understanding of the Chapter 1 question. How does a mother dolphin communicate with her calf across a distance? The purpose of this critical juncture is to gauge their understanding of how science gets from one place to another. Critical concepts that students should understand are that sound travels as a wave from the source to a listener, and that the thing that sound travels through, in this case with the dolphins, the water, moves only a little. So in this assessment, you project page 19 from the student investigation notebook, and students label the drawing and describe how the sound gets to the calf, telling what's moving a little and what the sound is traveling through. This assessment suggests having students elaborate orally to make sure you have accurate information about student thoughts, particularly to help those who may have challenges in getting the information down in writing. To tailor instruction, it suggests revisiting pages in the reference book, and it gives specific suggestions of questions and statements the teacher can make to elicit student ideas and help students make their thinking visible. So looking back at Progress Build Level 1, what do you notice? Yes, this assessment really directly gives you information about their understanding of the Progress Build Level 1 idea. A wave is a pattern of motion. Okay, here you see the student notebook page that's used for this critical juncture assessment and the diagram that is projected as well as given to the students. So this is a part of your normal instruction, but it gives you great information on where kids are on level 1 of the progress build. In this activity, students construct an explanation for the Chapter 2 question. How does sound energy travel through water from a mother dolphin to her calf? The purpose is to gauge student understanding of how sound energy travels at the particle level. In their explanation, you want to see evidence of these critical concepts. Sound energy travels as a wave. The particles of the material it travels through move only a little. Sound travels as a series of collisions between particles. And when particles collide, they transfer energy, and that changes how they move. You also hope that they're understanding that a sound wave is a pattern of motion that occurs when the particles collide and spread apart. Then guidance about what their explanation should look like, it tells you, is listed under the possible responses tab for this unit. So when you look at lesson 2.6, activity 3 on the platform, there'll be a possible responses tab that shows you what you're looking for in student answers. So the teacher projects the student notebook, page 43 on this critical juncture assessment, and models the first sentences of the explanation. And then students use class-developed charts, the unit wall, and their sound diagram to write the rest of the explanation. Sentence scaffold frames are on page 44 for students that you feel like could benefit from those. And then to tailor instruction, a sequence of activities are suggested, including sample sketches that the teacher can make to show particle collisions and deepen understanding. So looking back at Progress Build Level 2, sound energy travels through a material as a series of particle collisions. You can see how closely this assessment ties with the evidence of student understanding that you want to collect and how it gives you some actionable feedback. In Critical Juncture 3, we're looking for student understanding of how sounds can differ and how a listener can hear and recognize different sounds. The concepts you want to see demonstrated in student explanations are that when sound waves have different amplitudes, we hear sounds with different volumes. And when sound waves have different wavelengths, we hear sounds with different pitches. The lesson prompts the teacher to project a message from the park superintendent and highlight the questions that are asked of the students in that message. Then students write their responses on page 76 and 77 of their student investigation notebooks. The teacher projects scientific explanation guidelines, discusses the audience they're writing for, reminds them to use scientific language, and provides other resources that may be helpful. Again, you can see examples of what you're looking for in student answers under the Possible Responses tab on Lesson 3.7, Activity 2. To tailor instruction, it suggests returning to the sim and taking students through a series of activities and questions to further develop understanding. So, what are your key takeaways about the critical juncture assessments? Share your ideas with your teammates. So you may want to pause for a second. Teachers often say they're pleased with these features. It's just part of the teaching. It's not a stop, drop, and assess moment. It's easily actionable. It's a part of the lesson. It matches the progress build levels just exactly. And they love the suggestions that help improve student understanding. The on-the-fly assessments, represented by the little hummingbirds within each level there, are embedded formative assessments for noting students' progress with one or more of the following: disciplinary core ideas, science and engineering practices, and cross-cutting concepts. Often these are tied with literary skills as well, and several occur at each level of the progress build. On-the-fly assessments are the most frequently occurring assessments. They're a quick check for understanding designed to help monitor and support student progress throughout the unit. And they provide teachers with an opportunity to adjust instruction to meet student needs. They contain look for and now what evaluation guidance. The text of the on-the-fly assessments is accessible in the embedded formative assessment unit resource, as well as by clicking on the hummingbird icon in the activity in which it appears. So when you're looking at an activity that has an on-the-fly assessment, To get out of the instructional guide, you click on the little purple hummingbird and click on the hummingbird until he turns purple. There's your embedded formative assessment. And then this little box will pop up here with your on-the-fly assessment. When you click on this blue banner, it will give you the text of the assessment. So there are two ways to get the text of the assessment, either in the embedded formative assessments document or within the lesson itself. The Look For section describes what evidence of activity you're watching for in the activity, evidence of understanding, you're watching for in the activity, and it's often something that you listen for in student discussion or student writing during evidence collection opportunities. The Now What suggestions can really vary. They may vary as to when you implement them. It could be something you do in the moment or in an upcoming activity, even outside of the lesson. And it also might vary in how you implement them. It may tell you nothing's needed at this time, just keep an eye on this student, and this will be addressed in upcoming lessons. It may suggest providing some additional support or instruction, and it may send you back to revisit an activity looking at something in a new way. So using the embedded assessments document on the unit page, I want you now to pause and look for the on-the-fly assessments that lead up to critical juncture 1. And you can list them on page 3 of your participant pages or your handout. Select one and take a closer look. Then you can share what you saw with your teammates. You may want to fill in the Look For and Now What information now or come back to it and do that later. So pause the video now and find the on-the-fly assessments that lead up to critical juncture 1. There are 3 on-the-fly assessments that lead up to the first critical juncture. Remember, they will help you see if students are understanding the concepts that will build towards understanding of PB level 1. A wave is a pattern of motion. Now, find and list the on-the-fly assessments that lead up to critical juncture 2 on page 4 of your participant pages. As you get closer to teaching these lessons, be sure to review the on-the-fly assessments to help gauge where you are, where your students are with literacy skills, practices, cross-cutting concepts, and science ideas. All of these formative assessments that you see here will help you see student understanding as they're working towards the progress build idea that sound energy travels through a material as a series of particle collisions. And last, we want to find and list the last set of on-the-fly assessments that are leading up to critical juncture 3. Well, as you can see, there are many opportunities to collect formative information on students developing understanding, and there's some great suggestions on what to do to help students who are needing a little boost to get there. Evidence of student progress involves various modalities here, as you see in the list of activities. And you notice that this really addresses that PB level 3, that sound waves differ in amplitude and wavelength. Okay, now the last chapter of this unit addresses a little different topic, how humans use patterns to communicate with one another. There are a few on-the-fly assessments in that last chapter. So pause for just a moment and see if you can find those in the embedded assessment document. These assessments will help you see if students are understanding that there are multiple ways to transmit information across a distance, all of which involve using patterns as well as coding and decoding information. The student self-assessments, represented by the little blue smiley faces in each level of the progress build there, are opportunities for students to reflect on whether or not they understand or don't yet understand things about the core concepts from the unit and key ideas. These are optional. Last year, some teachers reported really loving these as science notebook reflection prompts. There's also a place to list the location of the self-assessments in your participant pages, and you can find where they are in the assessment system document. Investigation assessments are marked with a star on the assessment system graphic. The investigation assessment is a summative 3D performance assessment to evaluate students' performance of the science and engineering practices of planning and conducting investigations and analyzing and interpreting data, as well as their application of disciplinary core ideas and cross-cutting concepts. There's one investigation assessment for each grade level, K-5. Vision and Light holds the fourth grade investigation assessment. Actually, in lessons 5.1 and 5.2 of Vision and Light, students collaboratively plan an investigation of human senses. Students explore one of their own senses in order to understand how humans use their sensory structures to help gather information about their environment. They review the scientific practice of changing only one variable at a time during an investigation. Finally, they use the provided materials to design an investigation about their structures and receptors that are involved in one sense. In the next lesson, they complete the investigation, analyze data, and then share results with their classmates. So on this slide, you see the entire assessment system and how it's built around the unit's progress build. Remember, the dark line at the bottom represents the pre-unit writing, and the dark line at the top represents the end of unit assessment. Then as you're working through level 1 instruction, there are many little on-the-fly assessments, a unit self-assessment that's optional, and all of those things give you information about where students are before they do the first critical juncture assessment at the end of Progress Build 1. And then that pattern repeats with the on-the-fly assessments and critical juncture in levels 2 and level 3. So what does having this quantity of assessment opportunities do for students? And what does it do for teachers? Pause the video for a moment and discuss this with your teammates. Well, the assessments work together as a system to monitor student progress across the progress build. Having so many assessments means teachers have a constant window into student understanding. So as such, it's likely a teacher will not be surprised by their classes or individual students' performance on the critical juncture or the end of unit assessment. There's not just one opportunity for students to show understanding or for teachers to respond, because assessments are situated within the build of ideas. There are multiple opportunities for students to show progress and for teachers to adjust instruction based on assessment data. So what is a summative assessment? Summative assessments are used to measure student learning at the end of instruction, and they serve as a final evaluation of student understanding of core ideas in the unit. The end of unit assessment summatively measures student mastery of the progress build. In grades 2 through 5, the end of unit assessment is written. It contains rubrics for analyzing student responses and it's typically administered in the last lesson of the unit. Occasionally, it may have two parts. So here you see the pages of the end of unit assessment. You'll notice that there's a version A and a version B to those assessments. And what I want to show you here is that page 1, right here, and page 3 and page 4 are exactly the same between version A and version B. The only thing that changes is the amount of scaffolding on page 2. Students here are making scientific explanations to answer the question, how did the sound get from the computer to Maria, on pages 1 and 2. Then on page 3 of the assessment, it's allowing students to show their understanding of amplitude and wavelength as they explain why Maria was suddenly surprised by the change in the music. And then this assessment concludes by asking students to explain how computers can help humans send information across distances, and they make a drawing to help explain their thinking. The assessment guides contain rubrics for evaluating the 3 dimensions, and they show some possible student responses. The assessment guide will be located in the same lesson where you see that end of unit assessment. In addition to evaluating their understanding of science concepts, the science and engineering practice that they will assess here is constructing explanations, and the cross-cutting concept is patterns. The assessment guide contains several pages of guidance for evaluating assessments. Please be sure to contact me if you want to look through them together, have any questions, or want to score a few pieces of student work together. Okay, so we're getting ready now to close out the day and these 2 sessions together. Remember that our objectives were, we hoped you'd be able to understand the connection between the progress build, the unit phenomena, and the Amplify Science assessment system. And we hoped it would deepen your understanding of how to use the formative and summative assessments. So if you have teammates that you're working with, you may want to pause now and think and share with each other what takeaways you'll have from this session on the progress build and assessment system. Please be sure to contact me with any lingering questions, or if you would like help looking at the rubrics for the summative sections. And here's my contact information. Please feel free to get a hold of me if you've got questions or you'd like to do some planning sessions together. I'm Patty Works, and my email address is pworks@amplify.com. Thanks a lot for working with me today.